I'm Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey. This is the Resource Groups podcast. Here's what's coming up on today's show. A common misconception made about employee resource groups is that you can treat them in the exact same way that you would a business. I found it useful to think about the core functions of a resource group with regards to two criteria. Now, this may make financial sense. If it doesn't, then perhaps it's time to rethink what functions your employee resource groups provide. I'm Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey, and welcome to the latest episode of the Resource Groups podcast, where it's my job to explore, discuss, and deconstruct ways to help the people within your workplace reach their potential and drive performance through inclusive practices. In simple terms, this means I'll be speaking with people from a variety of disciplines, trying to connect the dots in terms of their best practices, habits, and other important pieces of information that you can apply in your organization. Today, I want to talk about one of the most common questions that I get asked about employee resource groups. I want to talk about the core functions of an employee resource group and why understanding this simple but elegant concept can change the way you experience and manage employee resource groups within your organization. So in today's show, I discuss several things, including one of the most common questions that I get asked about employee resource groups, the huge bias nearly everybody has about employee resource groups, the mistake that makes several organizations feel as if their resource groups are not fit for purpose, and much, much more. If you're finding this for the first time, make sure you check out the show notes to get details of all the reports and all the resources that are discussed in the show by going to resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's also where you can get in contact to make any suggestions for the show, recommendations for future guests, or just to learn more about what we're doing. I look forward to hearing from you and hope you enjoy the show. One of the most common questions that I get asked by people who are either starting employee resource groups or want to improve them is based around what I would identify as the core functions of an employee resource group. To be clear, this is not the same as an employee resource group's purpose or organizing principle. These are issues that I will address in my forthcoming online course. Here, I want to talk about the core functions of an employee resource group and explain why this concept can change the way you experience and manage employee resource groups in your organization. A common misconception made about employee resource groups is that you can treat them in the exact same way that you would a business. Now, don't get me wrong, more than one of the guests on this show have discussed why running an employee resource group as if it was a business has led to particular benefits in terms of administration and simply getting things done. However, it's worth noting that employee resource groups are, at their core, voluntary organizations. Members, committee members, and leaders are not paid for their participation. The tasks performed on behalf of the resource group are generally considered to be in addition to their day-to-day responsibilities. An issue we talk about on this podcast is about how individuals manage their own careers while taking additional responsibility for an employee resource group. Now, this is particularly challenging when employees aren't allowed to recognize the work that they do in their resource group as part of their performance review process. Now, think about that. Imagine putting in all those hours to organize events, workshops, and other activities for your group, and then it's not recognized by your organization. This can be really demotivating, and instead of leading to greater employee engagement, it can actually lead to the opposite, with motivated individuals becoming less engaged with the company. I raise this point. Why? Because cutting and pasting generic management approaches about leadership isn't always going to be applicable here, and it can lead to bigger problems. In my research, I borrowed a concept from the academic literature on voluntary groups, and I found it useful to apply this to employee resource groups. Specifically, when trying to understand an employee resource group, one of the first things I do is to try and establish its core function. I found it useful to think about the core functions of a resource group with regards to two criteria. The first are expressive functions, and the second are instrumental functions. Expressive functions refer directly to the benefits that the group provides to its members, which are aimed at promoting well-being for individuals. For example, creating safe spaces or connecting individuals with others that are similar to themselves are great examples of expressive functions. To be clear, this is not the same as training or development, which is intended to improve the way individuals function within an organization. Why? Expressive functions are intended exclusively for the benefits of the members. Therefore, any benefit the organization receives may be desirable. We would expect that, but it's not necessary as part of an expressive group function. In contrast, you have instrumental functions. Instrumental functions exist to maintain or create some kind of change or create a new set of circumstances. For example, the Black Caucus at Xerox is widely accepted to be the first employee resource group, and it was formed with the purpose of promoting equal employment opportunities and fair pay across racial groups within Xerox. Now, this is a clear instrumental function. This means that instrumental groups often pursue goals that lie outside of their membership. Why does this even matter? Well, there's a huge bias towards employee resource groups that have instrumental functions. Probably the one you're most familiar with is when experts, leaders, and organizations talk about how employee resource groups help promote a business case. Even I talk about it. I talk about how resource groups address the 3 biggest problems that organizations experience when trying to become more inclusive, the 3 Ps. The third P is performance. Employee resource groups have the potential to help an organization improve their operational performance. The research says that this is true, but it also says that this isn't their only function. It's okay to have groups that aren't exclusively concerned with getting more clients. It's okay to have groups that aren't exclusively concerned with cost savings. It's okay to have groups that aren't exclusively concerned with making more money. I've seen that employee resource groups have the potential to have both expressive and instrumental functions simultaneously. Members can identify with the group both for the safe space or the sense of belonging it provides, but also for the agenda that it seeks to advance as it tries to create change within the organization or society as a whole. A mantra on this podcast is that there is no one-size-fits-all, so it may be useful to make room for resource groups that have expressive functions and or instrumental functions. Having this clarity can help organizations to apply their resources in a way that just makes sense. If you look at which employee resource groups get the most funding in organizations, you may find that it's the instrumental functions. Now, this may make financial sense. If it doesn't, then perhaps it's time to rethink what functions your employee resource groups provide. The common mistake that organizations make when they're thinking about resource groups is that they expect them all to have instrumental functions. This can often lead to disappointment. What's more useful is for organizations to match the desired outcomes of a resource group with the functions that it performs. In any case, it's crucial for you to consider the expressive and instrumental functions of your employee resource groups in order to manage them effectively and ensure that they're fit for purpose. If you want to learn more about this, I'm working on some resources that I think you're going to find useful in helping you to understand and manage your employee resource groups. To learn more about my work and the resources discussed in the show, check out the show notes by going to resourcegroups.com/podcasts. That's resourcegroups.com/podcasts. If you're finding this for the first time, hit subscribe to make sure you get all the latest updates and access to other episodes of the show. We're active on social media. Follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @resourcegroups. On LinkedIn, we are the Resource Groups Company, and on our page, we have a slideshow that summarizes everything that we talk about today. If you've learned something from today's show, please share it with one other person that you think may find it interesting. If you really like the show, please leave us a 5-star review. With your support, we can really take this show to the next level. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.